The Colorado River Basin boasts the highest peaks in the lower continental U.S., the widest plateaus, the deepest canyons, and the lowest deserts in North America. In the desert Southwest, the climate is dry and the landscape often arid. Water management, however, through intricate irrigation and complex allocation, has made the desert bloom. Today, however, water is overallocated and shortages are expected to occur as competing needs drain more and more of the West's lifeblood. Water is the key ingredient for economic prosperity, for energy development and agriculture, for urban growth, the environment, and recreation. How that sparse resource, water, is managed in the future is an enormous challenge that will determine the social, cultural, and traditional makeup of the Southwest.
Now remember, we live next door to the ocean, but we also live on the edge of a desert. Los Angeles is a desert community, and without water, the dust will rise up and cover us as though we never existed. Now the Alto Vallejo can save us from this, and I respectfully suggest that $8.5 million is a fair price to pay to keep the desert from our streets and not on top of them.
The history of water has long been dramatic and tumultuous. Today in the desert Southwest, water shortages are pressing the limits on how we live, work, and play. In Colorado, a headwater state, we depend on the snow and rain that feed our rivers and fill our reservoirs. A complex system of laws allocates water among a growing number of needs, all of which depend upon the extensive Colorado River system.
The Colorado River belongs to 7 states. The 1922 Colorado River Compact allocated that water among an upper basin and a lower basin. Colorado was a part of the upper basin. In 1948, the upper basin states got together and Colorado got about half of the upper basin share. So we have about a quarter of the water supply.
Water administrators in the West are approaching a day of reckoning when population growth pushes the state's water supply to its limit. Juggling the use of water against future demands is no simple task.
It's a little bit like being in the middle of a rubber band, being stretched from both ends. We're being stretched for our water supplies to meet front range demands and our legal requirement to continue to allow water to go to our downstream states and Mexico.
Making matters worse are the uncertainties of climate change and worries over a prolonged western drought. Tree ring studies show that the climate has been in a constant flux over the centuries, with evidence of more pronounced droughts in the basin than those encountered in the first part of the 21st century.
In an era of climate change and in an era of intense competition with downstream states over the Colorado River's water, we have to be very, very careful how we use this remaining resource that we have.
The 4 major demands on water in Colorado are population, agriculture, recreational, and environmental needs and energy.
Colorado State, where 85 to 90% of our water historically has gone for agricultural use. But now we're starting to see shifts in that, and we have very intense competition going on today over the state's water resources. Part of that is fueled by 2.5 million new people that we expect by 2030. And beyond that, another 2 million people by 2050. If you have 80% of the population living on the Front Range and you see these very significant population increases, I think we're going to have a situation in the future where we have a sprawling city, basically from north of Fort Collins to south of Pueblo. So that's one major factor in this pressure on Colorado's water. And then agriculture is the other sector that is so important in Colorado's future. Agriculture today is about a $16 billion industry, but agriculture is facing significant pressures over competition for water resources and the shifting of water resources from agriculture to cities and municipalities.
Many Colorado farms and ranches have managed water for over 100 years. Mel Rettig is a second-generation Western Slope farmer in the Grand Junction area.
Well, without water here in the valley, it's a desert, so we wouldn't have any plants growing at all other than desert plants. Water is just critical to our agricultural needs. Where it used to be just primarily agriculture would demand the use of the water, now there's 4 major demands, and in some way we need to be able to figure out how to furnish enough water for the population. It's just going to be a combination and a juggling act.
Colorado ranchers are land stewards who represent a rich cultural legacy. Carlisle Currier is a third-generation West Slope rancher in the Grand Mesa area.
A lot of people think of agriculture only in terms of growing crops or only in terms of food. But agriculture, I think, is very important to the culture of Western Colorado. You know, about 75% of the land in Western Colorado is public land. Yet about 75% of the wildlife is on private land. And they're here because of the irrigated farmland, the irrigated cropland we have. If we dry up farmland, we're going to affect those issues of wildlife habitat, that open space that people in Western Colorado value. So I think it's very important, not just to us farmers, but to the people of Western Colorado as a whole, that we're able to maintain a viable irrigated agriculture in this part of the state.
Another pressure that's occurring in Colorado is over energy development. Colorado, particularly in Western Colorado, has extraordinary energy resources. These are resources which are nationally in demand, perhaps even internationally in demand. And so a lot of people are looking to Colorado, particularly Western Colorado, to provide those resources.
Today, oil and gas are highly visible on the Western Colorado landscape. Looming in the future is the potential for oil shale, projected as the highest water user in the energy sector.
Water administration in the future is going to change as a result of the increase in the oil and gas industry. And I think people would be very surprised if they went up on Piance Creek and saw how much land is no longer privately owned. It's owned by the bigger companies. And all of these companies either already have decreed augmentation plans and change of water rights, or they're in court right now doing just that.
We know that in terms of seniority, that those are senior or could curtail some pretty significant existing uses of water. For the time being, they're continuing to use those for agricultural purposes on the lands that they've been used historically. But we know ultimately they would think of converting those water rights to industrial uses.
If that occurs, it is going to place a burden on our river. It's going to change the way we operate the river, because that's another big use for water. Could become even a bigger use of water than municipal water is today in the West Slope. And if that occurs, certainly agriculture is once again going to be a target for the energy companies' need, and something that we certainly need to be aware of is down the road in the future.
The energy companies are paying good money for these senior agricultural rights. We don't think it's because they want to be in the ranching business.
People love to recreate on our lakes and our streams and our rivers. Hunting and fishing is a $10 billion industry in Colorado. And there's a lot of pressure on us as state leaders to protect the viability of the state's streams and rivers and lakes for what we call non-consumptive purposes.
Recent water allocations have included recreation, a growing part of the state's economy.
In 2001, the Colorado State Legislature recognized the value of recreation in the state of Colorado. They went and formulated legislation that would allow entities like the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District to file for a recreational in-channel diversion. A recreational in-channel diversion is a non-consumptive water right, meaning that it does not consume any water, but it does establish a place and time for demanding a certain amount of water for recreational use.
This means a lot. This improves our boating so much. For the beginner, intermediate, to improve your skills, it's safe, it's welcoming, there's no real challenges here and obstacles. So, it's improved the whole season.
The four major water needs, population growth, agriculture, energy development, as well as recreation and the environment, are under threat from increasing competition, climatic fluctuations, and the new challenges they bring.
There are major uncertainties as to how much water we have and how much water we can use in the future. The first uncertainty is what's going to happen downstream for our energy industry, primarily oil shale. We really don't know how much water it will require because the technology to develop oil shale hasn't been proven up yet. A second major uncertainty is what's going to happen to our climate. There's a belief and a strong scientific consensus that man is accelerating a change in climate. We're making this earth warmer. Does warmer mean less precipitation? No, not necessarily. We may end up in a situation where the mountains of Colorado get more snow. We really don't know. But we do know a warmer world means that people will use more water. Crops use more water. People in their homes and their lawns will use more water. So we have demand uncertainties on the Front Range. We have demand uncertainties in western Colorado for oil shale. We also know that climate is changing, and where it's going to go, we don't know.
Bill Trampy, a recognized and respected water leader, is a second-generation rancher in the Gunnison Valley. He brings with him a rare blend of traditional ranching and visionary clarity.
I'm sure that if we come into times of shortage, that there'll be a demand for water on the Front Range that is going to curtail uses on the West Slope, agricultural uses on the West Slope. That's going to be very hard on West Slope agriculture, and the kind of agriculture that we're looking at here today, it's probably going to ruin. I hope we're smart enough to know and figure out how to prevent that happening in the Colorado River.
Water in Colorado fluctuates with the climate and the seasons. It is a precious, finite resource besieged by a growing number of competing needs. As water is stretched thin, hard decisions must be made. Those decisions will determine the future of Colorado and the entire southwestern United States.